This is NTV.
Good evening. We welcome your company on NTV tonight. We have a full meal prepared, but first the appetizer.
Tonight, you could be transacting with the new notes as soon as tomorrow. CBK maintains it is the right move.
Will this country become a country of thieves, transactors of illicit flows, transactors of commodity, that sort of get-rich stuff?
And former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero and 8 others in the dock. 213 million shilling corruption trial begins.
Plus, teenagers charged with the murder of a 9-year-old in Kakamega.
Tuko na kijana wako hapa. Hatutaki uambie mtu yoyote wala polisi. Tunataka pesa taslim shilingi 50,000. Nikafikiria ni jokes.
Young suspect's younger victim laid to rest.
Also tonight, back to the streets for a former street boy, wiser and with a mission.
Mike ndiye akanintroduce kwa history ya barbary. So hata sikuwa najua kushika machine, but nilimwambia mimi natafuta job.
NTV Tonight with Dennis Okari and Olive Burrows.
Many thanks for joining us tonight in this news broadcast. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Raphael Mbalo. We begin tonight with the rollout of the new generation currency notes by the Central Bank of Kenya. And the big number tonight is 261.9 billion shillings. That's the total value of all currency notes in circulation. But let's break it down further and see how many of these pieces are actually in circulation.
There are currently 271 million 1,000 shilling notes in circulation and 30.8 million 500 shilling notes.
There are 54.8 million pieces of the 200 shilling note, 126.4 pieces of the 100 shillings note, and 100.5 million pieces of the 50 shillings note. So how much are these worth?
Well, the 1,000 shilling notes are worth about 217.6 billion shillings. The 500 shilling notes are worth 15.4 billion shillings. And the 200 shilling notes are worth 10.96 billion shillings. Having a sense of what those numbers are, the Central Bank of Kenya has defended the constitutionality of the recently issued new generation currency notes unveiled on Saturday, arguing that due process was followed contrary to claims made by politicians and activists.
The CBK will, however, need to defend this position in court after activist Okiya Omtata and East African Legislative Assembly MP Simon Mbogwa filed petitions to stop the rollout of the new look currencies.
Victor Kiprop was at the Central Bank's briefing and also has the details of how you will get the new currency.
In the 2 separate petitions filed this morning, activist Okiya Omtata and Iyala Member of Parliament Simon Mbogwa argue that the CBK did not conduct public participation on the design and imagery used on the new notes. The petitioners also queried the inclusion of the image of the statue of Kenya's founding president Mzee Jomo Kenyatta on the new notes, contrary to the constitutional provisions which prohibit the use of a portrait of an individual, claims the CBK dismissed.
We have followed the Constitution, not just by mistake, but completely as it should have been. It is true that there are those that claim that we had no right to withdraw the currency, and I think we will have that moment in court. The point is that we have always had that right, and we have used it in the past.
According to the Central Bank of Kenya, only the 217.6 million pieces of 1,000 shilling notes currently in circulation will need to be exchanged by October this year, while the rest remain legal tender. However, Kenyans wishing to exchange between 1 and 5 million shillings can only do it at institutions they bank with and make proper declarations on the source of their cash to be allowed to exchange or make deposits. Others who hold this volume of cash without bank accounts will have to contact the CBK for an exchange to be facilitated. Those with more than 5 million shillings in cash will also be required to contact the CBK. The central bank says the process is aimed at fighting illicit financial flows and counterfeits.
The question is, will this country become a country of thieves, transactors of illicit flows, transactors of commodity, that sort of get-rich stuff? Is that what we want to found our country on? I mean, I would submit it's not.
With at least 217.6 million 1,000 shillings notes currently in circulation across the country, the Central Bank of Kenya is confident that the October deadline given for the withdrawal of the old generation notes is sufficient enough for demonetization without causing constraints to the economy. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business, Nairobi.
Actually, related to that report, Nuru Abdulaziz did a story today that's coming up on basically the evolution of currency. And she says we used to use salt bars.
Which is very, very interesting. But in my generation, we've seen from Ile Penny Moja, Dururu, it has evolved several times. So it will be interesting to just find out how far we've come. And on the opinion count question tonight, we're actually asking you, do you support the government's move to change the currency? Do you support the government's move to change the currency that we used to have to the new currency?
And the toll-free SMS number you use is 20686. 20686. Do please include your name and where you're texting us from. And also you can tweet us on @NTV Kenya.
Let's move on now to another story. Former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero and 8 former officers in his administration presented themselves in court today for the start of the trial in which they are accused of graft and the loss of 213 million shillings.
The charges relate to Kidero's time at the helm of the Nairobi County government, and the crimes were allegedly committed between 2014 and 2016.
The former Nairobi governor, 8 former chief officers in Nairobi County, and the chief of staff in his administration stayed put in court as their lawyers argued out their positions in the 213 million shillings graft case facing them. Kidero and his co-accused have been charged and all deny the 35 counts read out to them. The prosecution, led by Assistant DPP Joseph Riongo, exuded confidence it had unimpeachable evidence against the accused in the case presided over by Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti.
But cannot trace it.
A former Nairobi chief officer in charge of health, Dr. Robert Ayisi, tabled in court a total of 21 payment vouchers to 2 traders, that is Lodwar Wholesalers Limited and Ngurumani Traders Limited. He told the court that he received a letter from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission while still serving at the county. Dr. Ayisi claimed Mr. Abdi A. Mohammed from the EACC wanted, among other documents, bank transfers made to the 2 traders. The transfers are said to have been made between March 21, 2014 and December 2016. In relation to Ngurumani, he said there were 18 folios with transfers totaling 9,490,000. Kidero and 8 others have denied charges of corruption and economic crimes, including conspiracy to commit an offense of corruption, abuse of office, fraudulent acquisition of public property, dealing with suspect property, and unlawful failure to pay tax to a public body. The hearing continues Tuesday. Kennedy Muredhi, NTV.
Staying with court matters, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji, has filed a notice to appeal a ruling by a 5-judge bench that stopped him from charging Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu with corruption.
The notice was filed at the Constitutional Division of the High Court, and as Ken Mijungu reports, Mwilu is getting ready for another round of a fight.
The dissatisfaction over the judgment delivered last week by the 5-judge bench constituted to hear the case against Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu has driven the DPP back to court. The bench, comprising Lady Justices Helen Omondi and Mumbi Ngugi, Justices William Musyoka, Chacha Mwita and Francis Tuyot, ruled that the DPP lacked the legal basis to charge Mwilu since the evidence was illegally obtained. The court accused the Directorate of Criminal Investigations of violating Mwilu's rights to privacy when they gained access to her Imperial Bank accounts without following due process.
Could we have rebutted all this much?
Something that the DCI dismissed and cited as not part of the subject matter before the court at the time.
If it was a question that we were supposed to address, and it was prayed in those applications, then we would have placed it before the courts. But it was not, and we were not given that opportunity.
Haji wanted the court to determine whether criminal proceedings could be instituted against a sitting judge. The judges further ruled that the DCI should have notified the Judicial Service Commission first of the charge of abuse of office facing the Deputy Chief Justice.
If we obtained evidence illegally, what were we to present in the court in the first place? Could we have rebutted all this much, invested all this much, knowing very well we didn't have a case in the first place? Who was to testify on falsely acquired evidence?
And whereas the DCI is not precluded from investigating cases of misconduct with a criminal element, the court ordered that the agency obtained had no bearing on the case against Lady Justice Mwilu, who is accused of fraud, bribery, abuse of office, among other charges. Haji says the court was wrong when it ruled that the evidence was obtained illegally, adding that it was not part of the pleading sought by the defense and that he was not invited to make submissions on the matter. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
To a story that we've been following for you, the family of 9-year-old Ismail Shukar comes to terms with his sudden demise brought on by a kidnapping incident at the weekend. Shocking details of those who may have had a hand in his killing are coming to light.
6 young men aged between 16 and 18 years are currently in police custody, suspected to have slit the young boy's throat and thrown him in a thicket.
Family and friends mourn the loss of a young life. 9-year-old Ismail Shukar left home on Saturday to attend madrasa at a mosque in Kakamega town. This was the last time his mother Saida Rajab saw him alive.
Napokea message na niambia mambo mama, tuko na kijana wako hapa, hatutaki uambie mtu yoyote wala polisi. Tunataka pesa taslimu shilingi 50,000. Nikafikiria ni jokes kama watu wa Okari wale wa Safaricom. Nikaonyesha mwenzangu pale, akaniambia these are just thieves. Kitu kakuja kaniambia hapana, kuna mtu analinda watoto madrasa, that is mwalimu huyu. Na nikampigia simu nikamuuliza Ustadi Abubakar, have you seen my son? Kaniambia hajamuona.
Investigations and tracking of the phone call led the police and the DCI to Shitunga within Ikonyero location in Kakamega County, where the body of Ismail was found dumped in a shallow tunnel with deep cuts on his throat.
Kuna washukia 6 mpaka sasa hivi wako katika korokoroni mwa polisi, Central Police, ambao wanasaidia polisi katika uchunguzi.
According to the police, the suspects are minors, 5 of them between 16 and 17 years of age, and the 6th suspect is said to be Edward Masi Kea, who is 18 years old. The murder of 9-year-old Ismail comes 2 weeks after an outlawed Kakamega killer gang known as 42 Brothers are said to have stabbed a 7-year-old boy to death in Matungu, Busia County. The government is currently conducting an operation by the GSU in the area to weed out the gang that has left behind a trail of deaths in their wake and is said to be made up of young men between 15 and 25 years.
Kulikuwa mwezi wa ngapi? Watano. Kuna msichana alirepiwa akauawa pia hapa juu. Tujui kama ni 42 brothers wametoka Matungu, wamekuja huku, ama tujui kama ni wengine hapa wamejikusanya wameanza kutuua.
Kwa sababu ya operations ambazo zinaendelea huko nje upande ya Matungu na sehemu zingine, kuna uwezekano ya wakora kujificha hapa town, na hiyo ndio tulisema to launch operation katika hii town kuhakikisha kwamba watu wasikuwe na shida yote ya insecurity.
2 people in connection with the murder of 7-year-old Malik Heights, a grade 1 pupil at Bulimbo Star Academy who was killed as his family attended prayers at a nearby mosque, are being detained at the Kakamega police station. The case will be mentioned on the 5th of June. The 6 teenage suspects linked to the murder of 9-year-old Ismail Shukar were today arraigned in a Kakamega court. They will be detained for another 14 days at the Kakamega police station after the prosecution asked for more time to enable police finalize investigations. Gladys Gashanja, NTV.
From that disturbing report of the killing of a child to another, a Murang'a couple accused of drowning their 2.5-year-old daughter were today arraigned before a court. Stephen Kamau Kariuki and his wife Mildred Imaile Musia from Kibwe village in Murang'a East Sub-County were arrested on Sunday after the body of their daughter Sibli Matsitsa was retrieved from the Madhyoya River.
The prosecution told the court that police are treating the death as a murder and requested the court to grant them 14 days to complete investigations before they are formally charged. In another twist, a report from the prosecution revealed that some months ago, the 2-year-old had been admitted in hospital after the mother tried to poison her. The 2 suspects will remain at the Murang'a police station until the 17th of June, when their case will be mentioned.
Elsewhere, the court has ruled that the contested marriage between Meru Senator Mithika Linturi and Marianne Keitani can be determined by both giving evidence and being cross-examined.
Linturi had wanted the petition dismissed, saying that no marriage existed between him and Keitani, but trial magistrate Peter Gisora said both parties, including elders from Meru, Nandi and Kericho, will take the stand. The registrar of marriages and any other person who witnessed the marriage may also be called upon to testify.
And finally, from the courts, the High Court has declined to grant 3 directors of an outdoor advertising company anticipatory bail in a dispute over the purchase of motor vehicles.
The directors of AdSite Limited, Ramesh Shah, Nasim Shah and General Manager Samir Shah had rushed to court over fears that the police would arrest and charge them in connection with the purchase of 3 motor vehicles from Marshall's East Africa Limited. They are also claiming that police officers have been trailing them and had threatened to seize the 3 motor vehicles, even though the matter was a civil case.
Tonight, we're also shining the spotlight on the administration of St. Stephen's Girls Secondary School in Machakos after students there attacked and injured 2 KTN journalists who are following up on a case of a student who's been missing from the school since March.
The students who also burnt the vehicle belonging to the Standard Group are said to have been incited by the principal to attack them. The case has been reported at the Kiumbi police station.
Standard Group journalist Boni Magana, Caroline B. and their driver were in Machakos to follow up a case of a student of the St. Stephen's Secondary School who has been missing. But they were instead pelted with stones by the students of the school, an action believed to have been incited by the school principal, Charles Kioko. Their vehicle was also burned. The mother of the missing girl was also attacked by the irate students who were armed with stones. The journalist escaped with serious injuries, but their camera was destroyed. In a statement, the Media Council of Kenya has condemned the attack, saying, quote, "While it is within the right of the school leadership to decline media interviews, it is against the law for anyone to incite and attack journalists who are in the line of duty." End of quote. Media Council of Kenya Chief Executive Officer David Omoyo has urged the police to expedite investigations into the unfortunate incident and bring the culprits to book. According to the mother, the Form 2 girl has been missing since the 4th of March this year. She did not report to school after the midterm break. It is not the first case of students said to have been missing from the school. In June last year, 2 Form 3 girls from the same school went missing after an alleged brutal beating from one of the teachers in the school. Eunice Omolo, NTV.
Dennis, have you ever faced physical harm in search of a story?
Severally. Sometimes it gets to a point where you get used to it. It happened when I was covering the Garissa University terror attack, but this was the military. Never have I come across something like this, especially from students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be hosting, or rather Mark Masai on Precipice tonight, will be hosting the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, who will be David Omoyo, who will, of course, weigh in on that incident.
Let's move on now to another sad story. Police officers in Kipsitet, Kericho County are hunting down a suspect believed to have murdered his lover, Gladys Chepkirui. And according to the family members, the suspect, identified as Victor Soy, and his lover had a fight on Sunday night before he fled the house.
One of the children of the 34-year-old woman found her body in the house. She was injured and naked. It is believed that the confrontation started as a loud verbal exchange and escalated.
Tulikuwa tumesikia kidogo nduru zilizokuwa zikipigwa kwa nyumba jirani. Alipofika nikauliza ni nini, akaniambia mamangu hayuko hai tena. Nikamuuliza kwa mara ya pili, niliingia ndani ni nyumbani mwa huyu msichana wetu. Kuingia ndani kweli nikamkuta alikuwa huji na alikuwa na majeraha tofauti, majeraha mingi sana kwa mgongo wake, kwa kichwa chake, hata tumbo kuna vidonda mingi sana ambazo nilishindwa alimfanyia nini.
Wow, that's been quite a number of disheartening stories. But coming up, an uplifting one. Street life did not get to his head. Andrew Owini's barber shop that also saves street boys.
We're taking a break. We'll be back with more stories.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on NTV tonight. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission was today at pains to explain the purchase of Integrity Centre at a cost of 1.5 billion shillings. Appearing before the National Assembly Public Accounts Committee, EACC's commissioners said Parliament had okayed the purchase of the building. According to Commissioner Paul Geshoke, the deal to purchase the building was made between the National Lands Commission, Parliament and the Treasury. The Commission also at pains to explain why they agreed to release payments before examining the structural plans for the building.
This land had been bought by Tegus at 400 million, hardly 4 years before. Then you are buying it at 1.5 billion, almost 4 times in a space of 4 years. Even if it's appreciation, that is way beyond any appreciation of land that we know of.
Parliament advised that EACC should proceed to compulsorily acquire Integrity Centre. Consequently, EACC requested the National Treasury void dated 10th April 2017 to advise on the process of a compulsory acquisition. The National Treasury advised on the process of compulsory acquisition void data that dated 13th April 2017. Further, the National Treasury allocated 1.2 billion in financial year 2017-18 towards the compulsory acquisition.
I'm asking Commissioner Gachoka, why did you go ahead to authorize the procurement of this property without first getting access to the designs? What were you buying, if I may ask you?
That the issues that the honorable members are raising are the issues that we as commissioners had raised. Sorry. And it is the issue, and you realize that this process of acquisition had gone on for years. In our report.
Or you raised as a commission?
Even in the issue of the drawings, we have requested for the drawings.
So you are at a commission, you are those issues
and
yourselves?
Remember, yes, you know, I'm a procurement specialist, by the way. I chaired the Public Procurement Appeals Board. If this thing was going, it was not through, you know, the normal procurement process. And that is why you realize that when it comes to the national compulsory acquisition, it is different from acquisition.
How did somebody who's acquiring for you the land, which is the National Land Commission, at the same time do for you valuation? It's like this Chinese contract, where they give the loan, they do the road, they commission it, and they hand it over.
From a life in the streets to winning awards, Andrew Owinyi's life story is quite the inspiration.
Owinyi, popularly known as, and I hope I'm saying this right, Dennis, Kize Mwana Waingo, was once a street boy for 4 years, but now he's training young boys to become barbers and equipping them with skills that will help them become independent. NTV's Sharon Baranga met with him and shares his story.
Monday morning at Mukuru kwa Ruben Informal Settlement in Nairobi, a different kind of class is in session. About 50 youth are in attendance. The day's instructor is 35-year-old Andrew Owinyi, popularly known as KZ. He has a handful of youth helping him train others on the basics of grooming. KZ's story is one that stirs hope in many ensnared in life's challenges.
My parents were separated when I was 2 years old. So singweza kuendelea na education. I dropped out when I was in class 2. Nikaenda the nearest town, ilikuwa Bungoma. So I was there kama chokora. Kwa nasaidia watu kubeba hizi malagages wa kwenda long distance. So napewa around like 50 bob ama 20 bob. Nikasave about 12,000 for a period of 3 years.
Armed with just his savings, KZ was lucky to meet a man who introduced him to church, where he says he got his breakthrough.
So Mike ndiye akaniintroduce kwa history ya barbering. So hata sikuwa najua kushika machine, but nilimwambia mimi natafuta job. So kuniintroduce kwa hiyo manager akaniambia wewe fanya hivyo, wewe kuja kazi. It was on Friday, nikanyoa mtu vibaya, nikapigwa mangumi zingine aziishi.
He was then trained and became a master in the craft. Eventually, he saved enough to open his barber shop 6 years later. This greatly improved the quality of life he was living and decided to give back to the community. And that's how the Fresh Cuts Foundation was started. KZ and his group conduct a 1-month training to unemployed youth from different areas. The young people are equipped with skills and later they are given 2 shaving machines to start their own businesses.
We've trained over 500 youth. Now out of 500, I would say about 30% either wamefungua kinyozi yao ama wamepata employment.
Na sasa nimejua kunyoa na nikakuwa beneficiary which sasa niko job na naweza sasa rent nyumba yangu.
So far they have conducted training at Kibra, Dandora, Mathare, Mukuru Viwandani, Nairobi West Prison, Industrial Area Prison, Kamiti Prison, and now it is Mukuru kwa Ruben's turn.
For an organization that was born in June last year, Fresh Cuts Foundation has made major milestones as it seeks to impart the society for the better. They hope to move to other counties in future.
KZ looks back at his life with pride. From his life in the streets, he has rubbed shoulders with important people. He was among 16 young people who in December last year bagged the Champions for Change Award given by the former US Ambassador Robert Godek and the then Education Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
Well, Dennis, turns out it was KZ.
Not Kize.
No.
I think you're just influenced by the corruption of a Kamba word somewhere.
Oh, come on.
Or something.
But do you think that trimmer Sharon Baranga was using was on?
I highly doubt.
Well, from that to a more somber story, let's focus on the ongoing protests in neighboring Sudan, where the military rulers forcefully broke up a sit-in outside Khartoum's army headquarters, leaving at least 13 dead.
The military's ongoing move came after a week-long standoff with protesters seeking a speedy transition to civilian rule following the overthrow of longtime leader Omar al-Bashir in April.
Heavily armed security forces in pickup trucks mounted with machine guns were deployed in large numbers all around the capital, while machine gun fire and explosions were heard from the protest site. Medical sources said at least 13 people had been killed and dozens hurt. The Central Committee of Sudan doctors reported a large number of casualties and called for urgent support from humanitarian organizations to help the wounded. The doctors' committee said the forces were also opening fire inside the city's East Nile hospital and chasing peaceful protesters. Another hospital near the site of the sit-in was surrounded and volunteers were prevented from entering. The Sudanese Professionals Association, which spearheaded nationwide protests that started in December, said it amounted to bloody massacre and hundreds of people had been wounded. It called on the Sudanese people to take part in total civil disobedience to topple the military council. The Transitional Military Council has, however, denied multiple reports of their forces violently dispersing the sit-in in front of army headquarters as protesters took to the streets in towns across Sudan in response to violence in Khartoum. But protest leaders say the site had been cleared of demonstrators. Negotiations between protest leaders and the ruling military council have broken down as the two sides have failed to agree on whether a planned transitional body will be headed by a civilian or a military figure. The United States and Britain has called for an end to the crackdown on demonstrators who want the generals behind the overthrow of veteran President Omar al-Bashir to hand over to civilian rule.
Well, I'll be back with business after this short break. Stay with us.
Dan Mwangi, Dan number 8, may not be in the building, but the former
Time now for business. Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, is among 18 government informational websites hacked by a group calling itself the Kurd Electronic Team. A visit to the website indicates that it is under maintenance. It's not the first time that critical government websites have been hacked, pointing to the ever-present dangers of the cyber world in this digital age. IFMIS is meant to ensure that public resources are prudently spent, but its use has, however, failed to prevent financial malpractice both at the national and county levels. A statement from the government says none of the websites affected is connected to any core databases or systems, and that a team is working to restore normalcy on the defaced website. Well, economic experts at the financial services firm PKF are suggesting that the government reduces the corporate tax level in a bid to stimulate reinvestment into the economy by businesses. This suggestion comes in the wake of the struggle that small and medium enterprises are facing in doing business in an economy whose growth rate has been put to question. Alex Mwangi reports.
Kenya's appetite for debt has financial experts cautioning that the country is on a dangerous trajectory. Last month, it took on over 200 billion shillings of debt in the form of a Eurobond, further piling on to the debt per capita level.
If you were born in 2014, you were born with a debt of 50,000 shillings on your head. If you are born today, you are born with a debt of 100,000 shillings on your head. That debt per capita has doubled in the last 5 years, despite the fact that our population increases.
You've seen already China has refused to give them money for SGR. The Bechtel US group, which was supposed to do the Mombasa-Malaba highway, has pulled out. Obviously, the debt situation is not good, and we can only finance that through taxes.
The conversation on Kenya's debt level has in recent years been at the forefront of economic discourse. It has led to concerns on how prudently the country is spending its public financial resources.
We really do think that the first thing that government could do, should do, or Kenya could do is actually stop or postpone or suspend all our capital mega projects, development projects, until we have recreated the capacity to manage and implement these projects.
We think that we can't, or government cannot continue to milk a cow, beyond a certain point. We pay 30% corporate tax. The reality of the matter is, you can walk in the streets, you will feel it. Businesses are really struggling. Go to the NSE, almost 30% of listed entities have given profit warnings, no dividends. And in fact, you go to the middle tier businesses, people are closing down, factories are closing up.
Among the challenges that the financial experts at PKF have cited need to be addressed include the issue of taxing the digital economy, streamlining the operating environment for small and medium enterprises, tackling corruption effectively, reducing the crowding out effect, and for the Kenya Revenue Authority to account for the capital gains tax. They spoke during a pre-budget media briefing. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Farmers from the North Rift region have censured the government for failing to allocate sufficient funds to the agricultural sector in the 2019-2020 budget set to be read in Parliament later this month. Speaking after holding a meeting in Eldoret, the farmers allege a wider scheme within government to cripple the agricultural sector by allocating inadequate funds. The farmers are demanding the resignation of Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Kiunjuri, accusing him of mismanaging the critical sector. Moiben MP Silas Tiren, who is also a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, has faulted the government for treating the sector lightly despite it being the anchor of Kenya's economy.
Hakuna makadirio ya pesa katika nafaka pamoja na makadirio ya pesa kwa maziwa. Tunauliza waziri wa musika Mwangi Kiunjuri kama ameshindwa na kazi, step aside. Watu wengine waliosoma wako tayari kuongoza katika Ministry ya Agriculture.
Area zote yenye naguzia ukulima haijapewa pesa. Subsidy
ya kusubsidize maneno ya fertilizer haijawekwa pesa, subsidy ya maneno ya mahindi haijawekwa pesa. So tunataka kujua wanataka kuua hapa namna gani?
Maize millers have raised alarm over looming scarcity of flour following a maize shortage. The millers claim the shortage is as a result of delays by the National Cereals and Produce Board to release maize they'd already paid for. The millers now want the government to hasten the importation of maize. Lillian Carey reports on the recent push and pull between the government and maize millers.
About 3 weeks ago, millers paid over 1 billion shillings to purchase maize at the Strategic Food Reserve, only for the distribution to be stopped following a complaint letter by a member of United Grain Millers Association faulting the allocation of maize to the processors. The millers say that they have been forced to shut their mills as they are unable to buy maize from the market.
We can say with certainty that our flour is going to be out of the shelves in the next couple of days if the maize is not released immediately to the millers.
Livestock farmers are already feeling the pinch of the shortage of the cereal, with the price of animal feed hitting a 3-year high. The Association of Kenya Feeds Manufacturers says that the price of most animal feed has gone up by about 300 shillings.
We seem to have tough wars between National Cereals and Produce Board, the bosses at the ministry, and the strategic feed reserves, and people trying to outdo each other in terms of who has the last word.
But even as the millers warn of a looming crisis, the government says it has set up measures to avert food insecurity, which is prompted by the depressed rainfall experienced in various parts of the country.
We shall purchase livestock in drought-stricken counties and release maize stocks held in strategic food reserve into the market at an affordable price.
The millers say that the maize at the National Cereals and Produce Board is in bad state, and more delay continues to compromise on its quality. They are now calling upon the government to expedite the process of importing white and yellow maize because the available stocks can only last up to July. Lillian Kiarie, NTV.
The crash of 2 new 737 MAX 8s within the space of 5 months and the subsequent admission by Boeing that the implementation of the software that caused them was incorrectly done has led to a split among global aviation regulators. America's Federal Aviation Administration, which certified the MAX planes, has lost some of the credibility it had with regulators from other continents. Following the crashes in which 346 lives were lost, the FAA was the last of the major regulators globally to ground the MAX 8. It came to be discovered subsequently that the FAA delegated some of its responsibility to Boeing itself, creating a conflict of interest. Canada's aviation regulator has already suggested it may work more closely with European regulators rather than the FAA on the matter of the safety of the MAX aircraft. For Boeing, this all means that the excitement that the certification of the MAX 8 will take place in the shortest time possible has been significantly dampened. Before we close business, just to brief you on a developing story, Malik Heights, that's a building along Ngong Road, has been on fire for some time now. We are following that story up for you. Malik Heights on Ngong Road building is on fire. We don't have any details of whether there are any deaths or any casualties or anyone injured in this particular incident, as it's still going. And we're waiting to get reports of, the firefighters responding to this fire. Again, Malik Heights along Ngong Road building is on fire. We'll keep you updated as soon as we get more information. That's business.
Thank you for staying with NTV tonight. Most young people are cautious about venturing into the risky world of business and entrepreneurship and instead prefer the more secure life in employment. Case in point. But in this week's My Job segment, we highlight a business that proves that greatness can come from humble beginnings.
Employment is security, but business is freedom. According to Elizabeth Mukami, who left her job to invest time and money in her own venture.
I've worked in this industry for 6 years. I was working in Westlands and I thought it's a nice venture. So I started saving while I was still employed. And it got to a time when I felt I need to start something of my own. I knew where to get the machines and where to get the mugs because normally they are special type of mugs. You can't just get a mug from a supermarket and bring it for me to brand for you.
She gives everyday items a personal touch, a process that takes a short time but with an endearing result.
Completely, I have to make sure that it has branded properly. So when I'm sure, I just remove the paper.
This is where she does the production and packaging of her wares. She relishes the humble beginning, knowing that greater things are ahead.
Sometimes it gets to a point when you're doing your stuff, you're doing marketing, you're looking for new designs and business is not coming. So what keeps me going is the passion that I get when I'm doing that job. And at the end of the day, I get returns. One client shows up one evening. He gives you business and it sorts you out.
On display are other items that she sells to clients looking for gifts and keepsakes for their loved ones. These attract walk-in clients who, after the interaction, get to learn more about the other, more personalized products.
The business is doing well because it's able to pay bills for itself and also support me and my family because per se, it's the only source of income that I have. Orders for birthdays, Mother's Days, special days. Yeah, you see, one thing, it's unique because we can put the photo of the person on the mug and a message. It works as a memoir because if the person does not use it, he can keep it somewhere where they'll be seeing it.
Elizabeth encourages young people to be bold, to make the transition from job seekers to job creators. Her story has been an inspiration to her brothers who, after school, want to follow in her example. She accommodates them in the spirit of mentorship.
After starting this business and my brothers joined me, they are not like working for me. They also started their own. Like they have their online shops where they sell their own things. They sell gifts and electronics and the likes.
Elizabeth has great aspirations for her business.
After 10 years, I find myself running a very big company with it's a one-stop branding company with all machines to do large format printing, engraving. We'll even we have a dream of opening a college where we train young guys how to do this business, how to brand, how to operate machines.
And so it seems in downtown Nairobi, small stalls harbor great ideas that come to life when courageous people take the financial risk. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Now, as Dennis brought your attention a bit earlier, Malik Heights building on Ngong Road is on fire. The fire is said to have started at about 8 p.m. Several explosions were heard, and there are efforts ongoing to put out the blaze. Malik building on Ngong Road is on fire. The lower levels of the building are said to be on fire, and there are efforts ongoing to put out the blaze. As soon as we have the latest information, we will bring it to you. As for now, I hand you over to Ida Waringa for sports.
started off well. I'm Aido Orenga and let's play. The national men's volleyball team began its Africa Zone 5 qualification on a positive note, beating Uganda in 5 sets at the Kasarani Indoor Gymnasium. Kenya lost the first 22-25 before winning the next 2 sets. Uganda would even the tie 2-2 by taking the 4th set 25-27, but Kenya edged them out 15-12 in the decider, winning it 3-2. It was also sweet revenge for Kenya, who lost to Uganda 3-2 back in 2017 during the World Championship qualifiers in Rwanda. Next, the hosts will face Rwanda on Tuesday before they wind up the 3-day event against Egypt on Wednesday. And with less than 3 weeks to the African Cup of Nations, NTV Sport begins its road to AFCON build-up. Tonight, we look at the Air Defense Stadium, where the Harambee Stars will play their first group game against Algeria in the Continental Showpiece.
The African Cup of Nations kicks off on 21st June in Cairo, with the Kenya national team starting their campaign 2 days later against Algeria at 11 p.m. East African time. The match will be played at the Air Defense Stadium in Cairo, otherwise oddly known as the June 30th Stadium. In March 2019, it was announced that the Air Defense Stadium would replace the city's Al Salam Stadium, home to 40-time Egyptian League champions Al Ahly, as the host of the AFCON Group C fixtures. Kenya is pooled in Group C together with Senegal, Algeria and Tanzania. The stadium, built by the Egyptian Air Defense Forces, has a capacity of 30,000 and is one of the venues of the Egyptian Premier League, being the home to Pyramids FC. The stadium has had its fair share of controversy, though. The grounds were the scene of a gruesome stampede in February of 2015 that saw over 20 football fans perish during a league match between Zamalek and NP. June 30th Stadium will be one of 6 stadia hosting the AFCON.
Yes, pleasure.
Meanwhile, the Harambee Stars pre-tournament preps in Paris continue, buoyed by the arrival of Bandari goalkeeper Farouk Shikalo and Sweden-based forward Christopher Mbamba. This brings the number of players already in the Stars French camp to 19, with the remaining 8 who are still on duty at their respective parent clubs expected to join the camp in the course of the week.
One game can change your life, so ni big step na I think ni motivation kwangu to represent country.
We are not the favorite, but we've worked hard enough to earn a spot in the AFCON, and it's not going to be easy. We're going to work for it and try to make ourselves happy, to make the country happy.
All the best to the Harambee Stars. Well, back in December 2018, I sat down with Manchester United legend Rio Ferdinand and picked his mind on who he thought would win the English Premier League and UEFA Champions League titles. 6 months later, and with the seasons well wrapped up, it's uncanny how accurate the former Red Devils defender was. Have a look. Who do you think will win?
support the government decision to replace the currency. A number of thoughts on the matter. We have Dylan Nyariki, who says, I fully support the new currency that has been rolled out. It will help gear up the fight against corruption and the fight against illicit or fake currency.
We have someone else here, Omoria HSC, who says that CBK should have issued a 1 month time rather than the 3 months, because these corrupt guys can as well corrupt the financial institutions and have their loot exchanged. I support the new currency.
We have Calvin Queens, who says, yes, this is one of the ways to curb money laundering. Actually, if asked, the deadline should be 1st of August. And finally, Brayo Conte says, interesting how the 1,000 shilling note is circulating. It's a clear sign of a number of such notes being in our bedrooms. Do you have a number of those notes in your bedroom?
Well, I still don't. Many people still keep this on. But just before we wrap up, there's a tweet from the DCI, and we'd earlier ran a story about Kenyan journalists who were assaulted by students. Mr. John Kialo, the principal of St. Stephen's Girls' School in Machakos County, and Miss Mary Mukami, the mother of the missing girl, have been arrested by officers following the attack on the journalist, and the 2 suspects will be charged with incitement to violence, among other offenses. So the DC has already tweeted this, and they've arrested those who they perceive to be responsible. Thank you so much for watching.
And as you can see, running on the lower third of your screen, there is a fire at the Malik Heights building on Ngong Road. The lower levels of the building are engulfed in flames. There are efforts to put out that blaze. The cause is as yet unknown.
Yes, still not known. So Press Plus is coming up next with Mark Masai. But we wind up at this point. My name is Dennis Okari.
And I'm Olive Burrows.